Hello everyone and welcome to another Total War Warhammer live BattleCast. In this game we're going to be playing the Beastmen and we are indeed facing off against Norska. So guys, we're actually going to be using MALAGOR, the Dark Omen, mixing it up a little bit. Should be a fun time. But aside from that, we got some Bestigors in the front line and, with their armor and decent offensive stats, they can trade with Marauder champions and they can, usually outdo Berserkers and non-AP units like that. But we're mixing it up and getting Minotaurs. So guys, we have a bunch of Minotaurs with great weapons. I'm hoping they can deal with Mammoths or they can deal with Skin Wolves because again, they do have anti-large, they have good mass and are definitely ready to party at all times. We got some spears in the back to, just keep our Ungor Raiders from just getting massacred by some, hounds or different things like that, and some Gors on the sides. So the Gors, just a decent, offensive unit. They'll trade okay with Berserkers and against Marauders, relatively atritiously, but nonetheless they will hold. So, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to mix it up and try MALAGOR out. I don't know how good he's going to be. We do have the Savage Dominion here. We have the Traderkin as well as the Devolve. He also has some pretty cool buffs, so if you look at him, I know they're coming, but I'm going to show you guys. He does have the icon of vilification, I think. It gives 12% weapon damage, AP, leadership. He also has, bestial surge. So when he casts, all your units get like 24% speed and some vigor, so that's kind of neat. So we're going to advance on these foul foes. We're just going to advance a little bit, actually, because we have the range. So let's just, sit and kind of, bide our time a little bit. But he does have a bunch of Skin Wolves who are armored, and, these Minotaurs are up to the task, guys. They got some armor piercing, that's for sure. We do also have the Butchers of Kalkengard, which are the Regiment of Renown of the Minotaurs with shields. They have regeneration, and Wulfric's going to need to be really careful. If he comes in here too hot and heavy against all these Minotaurs, that's going to be not a fun time for him at all. We're probably going to summon a Cygor first. I think that's what we're going to do. So we're going to summon a Cygor, maybe shoot his Berserkers a little bit with some peppering fire. I'm not sure how the Gors will trade. I think Berserkers will cut him up pretty good. The Gors do have higher melee defense, but aside from that, they're much lower on a lot of the stats here. So let's get our missile units, and man, I really just want to focus on Wulfric. The Koroks Man-Rippers will also be very good here. Cool, so let's go ahead and summon a Cygor. No, let's wait for the fighting to start, I think. Cool, so we're going to get these guys charging in here. We'll get these guys charging in here. Make sure to get that charge bonus. We'll get these Minotaurs going against the Skin Wolf in here, and these guys can just charge in against those guys, and the Minotaurs can go here, and good. So the peppering units, we want them to just be shooting basically Wulfric with everything. We need to just put him down as quickly as possible. We're going to summon a Cygor right next to him and just, get that pressure there. We'll get our units on the flank going here, and since we don't have any pressure in the back, we're just going to pull our spears up to be like a secondary screen. So our Minotaurs, they seem to be doing well. I mean, you see they're doing some okay damage against the Skin Wolf right here, and over here they're fighting a little bit, but they're overextended. So we don't want them to be in front of our infantry pockets. This spear group, we're going to get zerged over here, so we're going to go ahead and send a lot of reinforcements there. And the Cygor, we're going to switch him to melee and have him just start working on Wulfric here. Great, so we do have the Traderkin, so we're going to use Traderkin right here, and just kind of it does have a slowing effect, which is quite nice. So the flanks, though, we did get collapsed a little bit. So we're going to pull these guys away and just form a bit of a new missile line right here. MALAGOR is going to scurry this direction because, again, there is a lot of pressure coming in here. But regardless, our Minotaurs are doing pretty good, it looks like. So let's get them going after Wulfric here. Our guys over here are getting swarmed on a little bit. So we're going to try and pull them back and just get them away. My opponent does have a lot of stuff coming in, so let's just go ahead and reform a new battle line, get MALAGOR kind of scurrying over here, because the center pocket seems to be going well for us. We do have the Cygor, our Koroks Man-Rippers are doing well. Let's get some of these spears pushing back against some of these Marauders. But yeah, they've gotten in the chicken coop, so our line really did falter a little bit over there. Let's go ahead and cast, do we even want to cast a Devolve here? I don't know, yeah. Anyways, we could probably swarm on Wulfric, and let's just bring my Lord up there, because, I mean, the backline units are probably just going to get zerged on here, but let's go ahead and, just shoot some missiles here. These guys can shoot at these wolves here, and because he does have that icon of vilification, so I'm hoping that thing will, do some decent work for us. So let's go ahead and swarm on him, and, let's just bring in MALAGOR. We gotta go all in. So we do have Traderkin here. So we're going to cast that, and the Butchers of Kalkengard seem to be doing okay. But they're honestly just getting swarmed on. I thought those large units would do a little bit better, but we're still having some problems here, guys. So MALAGOR's going to keep fighting here. We're working on Wulfric the Wanderer, but I don't know. We have the Koroks Man-Rippers who are back in action, so let's see if we can go ahead and secure our back line again. We got some Bestigors. We had a really hard route back there for sure. So let's go ahead and cast Devolve here. He does have a lot of infantry. Maybe we'll be able to do some damage. Wulfric is very, very low. So maybe if we can reform ranks and just get some missile pressure coming on him. Let's go ahead and shoot here. But the Werekin, I feel, just really, really punished a lot of our stuff. But we do have kind of a secondary line here. That Devolve was pretty good. Hit most of his troops. And he is pretty low across the board. The balance of power is definitely in his favor. But, I feel like we might have a chance if we can kind of whittle his lord down. But yeah, a lot of these Berserkers are coming back. And our summoned Cygor is trying its best to King Kong Godzilla right here. But yeah, nonetheless, it's looking a little bit grim. So Minotaurs are fleeing here. We do have this kind of big pocket, so let's go ahead and pull them in and see if they can kind of help my lord who's surrounded right now. But they are the Koroks Man-Rippers, which are not bad at all. So we have some missile units here. Let's go ahead and shoot these Marauder Berserkers. Let's get these guys going in as well. And yeah, so MALAGOR's doing his thing. I mean, this definitely would be a nice time for Morker. I mean, there's a lot of low units for sure, but nonetheless, we're gonna try and get in there. So let's get these great weapons fighting as well. We're shooting against some of these Marauder Berserkers. And yeah, so we're fighting hard, guys. We do have that nice aura right now, so he's providing that icon of vilification. But honestly, we just don't have enough density, and I feel like the great weapons weren't as like good as I thought they would be. I mean, granted, my control of them wasn't the best, but still, I figured they would do a little bit better. So let's go ahead and shoot at him a little bit. Let's go ahead and pop this arcane conduit. Oh, it looks like he broke actually. So yeah, that's probably going to be all she wrote. I got some troops coming back, but I don't think it's going to work out. But we did okay. We were able to do a little bit of damage to Wolfric, and we were experimenting with like a relatively non-competitive lord. My lord was pretty unimpactful, whereas his lord was kind of running around and stomping all over my front line. I mean, that's where Morker, the Shadowgave, really turns the tide of the battle. Like, being able to nuke down some of these guys, have like several groups of Chaos spawn would have been very helpful. The great weapons, I thought they would do okay against like the Skinwolf Werkin, but they just like, they made some contact. But then his Berserkers were able to get through and just kind of, with the support of the Mammoth, and really just kind of wreck on some of my Minotaurs with great weapons. So, but hey, it was an experimental build. Thought I might give it a try, and it's always fun to give good old Malagor a try. But honestly, Morker is just so much more competitive. Very well played to my opponent. Boom. And guys, this battle was a little bit short, so I'm going to be tacking on another replay to the back of this one, and I believe it's Vampire Counts against Norska, I think. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks again for watching this live Battlecast, and we'll see you in a minute. Hello everyone, and welcome to another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this battle, I'm going to be playing the Vampire Counts led by Manfred von Karstein. And guys, we're going to be facing off against Norska led by Throg, the King of Trolls. So let's jump right into this game and take a look at the army compositions, and we can go from there. So on the front line, I do have a combination of Skeleton Warriors mixed with the Grave Guard. So the Skeleton Warriors are just kind of a fodder unit, and they allow for some, more expensive stuff in the back line, like 3 or 4 groups of Cryptors as well as a Mortis Engine. But kind of the main anchor of my front line is going to be these Grave Guard and, of course, the Sternsmen, which are a regiment of renown of Grave Guard. But the Grave Guard are pretty good against Norscan infantry, like Berserkers and Marauders, and the ones that do have light armor, because they have fairly good offensive stats with 38 weapon strength and a true bonus versus infantry of 8. So against lightly armored targets, they'll do quite well, but you guys will also probably notice that they do have very low armor piercing values. So if you do end up facing off against like Fimir Warriors or let's say Marauder Champions, they're not going to perform quite as well. But regardless, they're kind of a decent kind of tank in the front line that's really going to allow your Mortis Engine and Cryptors to do the heavy lifting. So on the secondary line, I do have some Skeleton Spears. I have one group here, and one group here, so 3 in total, because a lot of times against Norska, they're going to try and bully you with Fimir Warriors or with Mammoths or other units like that, and they're just going to chase your Mortis Engine and really kind of go as they please. So what you need is just to kind of muck them up, and Skeleton Spears are very, very good at that. They do have charge defense against large if you are braced, and on top of that, they do have a bonus versus large of, I think they have 24 base and 13, so that's actually not bad at all, especially against like regular Skinwolves and things like that. We do have 3 groups of Cryptors. So Cryptors, I think, are one of the MVPs in this matchup. They're incredibly powerful against Mammoths, and they do pretty well against Fimir Warriors as well. So I definitely think they're a mainstay. They have enough mass to block them. So if you guys have seen my previous games with Vampire Counts versus Norska, I was able to kind of obstruct the Mammoths stomping all over my front line by just swarming them with Cryptors. So the Mortis Engine, this is also another staple, and I think the Claw of Nagash is actually very useful here, because the Mortis Engine is pretty good against Norska in those very long, atrocious frontline fights, and just wearing down those units that have like 10 or 11,000 HP. If you can keep this thing alive, it can do some serious work against Norska, and it does have, I think it causes terror. Yes, it does. It causes fear and terror, so it's going to rout off those Marauder infantry pretty well. One group of Fellbats just to muck up javelins in the back. I do have old Papa Manny up here flying around. He's going to be dropping some skeletons on top of their javelins, and aside from that, I do have the Dire Pack on the far side, Vanguard deployed, and then one group of Dire Wolves over here. So for my opponent's army, he has a combination of Marauder Champions mixed in with some great weapons, so a little bit of tank and spank going on in the front line. And then, of course, he does have the group of large giants back here, the ones that look kind of like Hodor from Game of Thrones. But he does have 2 of those guys, as well as Throg, the King of Trolls. So giants and monstrous units in general tend to be very good against Vampire Counts. Some success I've had with Norska against Vampire Counts is I'll use a front line of like Marauder Spears, and then I just stack them with Fimir Warriors, who are pretty big, and then throw a Mammoth in there, and it's really, really tough for the Vampire Counts to deal with that. Because again, they've always kind of struggled with large units, just like how Chaos is able to beat the Vampire Counts. You use Halberds, and then you stack Giants on top of them. It works pretty well. But the Giants are going to be tough to deal with for sure. It's it's probably going to come down to me like routing everything else and then just slowly wearing these guys down with the Mortis Engine. He does have 2 groups of the Norscan Ice Wolves here on the far side to do a little bit of harass and maybe go after some of my own wolves. They'll definitely beat the Dire Wolves. And yeah, looks like that's it. Shaman Sorcerer with fire. He does have the doesn't look like he has a Flaming Sword of Ruin, which is a little bit suspicious. Not sure what's going on there, but he does have the Piercing Bolts of Burning and the Cascading Fire Cloak. All right, without further ado, guys, let the games begin. So you can see my forces are going to be lining up here, just meeting him square on, and he did actually spot my Dire Wolves there on the far side, and he's going to be pulling his own Norscan Ice Wolves to go hunt those guys down. A little bit of an overcommitment for sure. He should have just sent one group. They have 95 speed to the 95 of my direwolves, so they're actually the exact same speed, but the combat stats is pretty big difference. 26, 14, and 22 compared to 32, 19, and 42. So the weapon strength on those Norscan Ice Wolves is pretty massive. Granted, the dire pack would do pretty well against those guys because they do have an anti-large bonus, but nonetheless, you know, definitely an overchase right there. Having those units on the flank now would have been very helpful. So in the front line, you can see the skeletons are going to be engaging with Marauder champions, and like I mentioned, they're just a fodder unit. So you know, any energy they can waste of these Marauder troops is going to be good. Some Grave Guard are going to be engaging here as well. And you can see the Mortis engine is going to be smashing into the front line of these guys. So these guys are going to get routed off incredibly quick. These like low tier Marauders against Mortis engine. You know, and the skeletons are already going to trade well with these guys because they only have 15 armor. But when you throw a Mortis engine in the mix, healing the skeletons, it's going to be very, very rough for them. So in the back, you can see Manfred has been summoning skeletons. So I summoned one group on this javelin here and the other group right here on top of this javelin. And we're able to do pretty well for ourselves, kind of mucking those guys down because javelins are extremely good against vampire counts. Had they been able to free fire, they would have been able to just, you know, poke down my Claw of Nagash and apply some excellent pressure. So one of the biggest aspects of this matchup, guys, is keeping the Mortis engine alive if you decide to go that route. Granted, there's plenty of builds where you don't need to use a Mortis engine, but in this case, you guys see what I mean? The Giants are completely surrounded by the Cryptors right now. So, you know, these two Hodors cannot get out of here. A nice piercing bolt from my opponent landing right on top of Cryptors as well as Graveguard. And I think it actually did some decent HP damage. Yeah, it did some okay work against some of my skeletons, I guess. But if you don't overcast it, I think it's it does a little less damage. But regardless, he's been trying to push his Giants past initially and, you know, get to my Mortis engine. But if you guys see here, I'm just kind of, you know, baiting the Mortis engine just like a, you know, like a bait fish over here. He did get some of his wolves on it, but still that's not enough DPS to bring it down. And I kind of re-engage it here. I try and bait the Giants in, and a lot of players are going to, you know, be like, oh, it's close to me, I can then target it. So then what you do from there, although it's frostbitten right now, so it's having trouble getting away, is you just pull back, and the Giants are going to be kind of stuck between that AI pathing after it, and then you know, taking damage from the Cryptors and Skeleton Spears and other units like that. So that's definitely a good tactic there. Granted, the Giants aren't taking a ton of damage. They're also completely pinned by these Cryptors. Hence, the rest of my army with the Mortis engine support, and a lot of these other guys are able to do pretty well for themselves. Over here, you can see these Marauder champions mixed in with some of these Marauders, probably doing pretty well in this matchup. Let's go ahead and take a look at the HP. 75 Graveguard to 60 Marauder champions. I must have gotten a rear charge, but yeah, these Graveguard with their anti-infantry bonus and 90 armor doing really, really well for me on the far side. Over here, you can see in the back line, I'm just kind of inundating him with skeletons. And even though, you know, Manfred, or not Manfred per se, but vampire counts did get nerfed with that 90% or 19-second cooldown on the Raised Dead, it's still really strong, and honestly I was able to cast it pretty much every time I wanted it. So you can see Manfred giving himself the Red Fury. I was trying to take out my opponent's caster, but he did have a little bit of a pocket here, and I didn't want Throg to kind of roll over there and get down and dirty and really, you know, punish Manfred, because if Throg gets his paws on Manfred, or pretty much any Vampire Lord, Vlad von Carstein can stand up to him for a little bit of time because, you know, Vlad does have that Master Beguilement, so he's able to, you know, lower their melee attack and stand and tank for a while. He also has about 1,000 more HP than Manfred, but, you know, nonetheless, nobody's really going to stand, especially, you know, as it pertains to vampire counts against Throg for very long. So, you know, getting a flying lord like this that can kind of fly around and impose his will, and I just kind of engage him against, you know, fleeing units every now and then to get that Sword of Unholy Power activated, and I'm honestly able to do really well for myself. So you guys can see the balance of power here is starting to, you know, tip in my favor a little bit. It's about 60% to my opponent, and or, you know, in my favor towards my opponent. And, you know, Manfred's just kind of flying around. I'm able to get on that Metal Sorcerer and do some decent work, and I have Skeletons and Graveguard and everyone collapsing on the last of his troops, and I've just kind of been, you know, running in circles with this Claw of Nagash. My opponent hasn't really been able to keep up with it. You know, the Giants are okay at it, but if you can muck them down with the Cryptors, and the Cryptors apply poison as well, so you can see the speed of the Giants is down to 25, so they're just so darn slow. Then on top of that, the Claw of Nagash does have a speed debuff. It's like a chilling aura of, I think, let's actually take a look and see what that is. So I think it's 36%. So these things are going to be so darn slow, and I think they're actually being affected, you know, by it right now, hence the reason they're so slow. In the back, some of these Norscan wolves get in there, and man, they had a nice little charge there against some of those skeletons, but you know, a lot of people don't know the difference here. The Norscan ice wolves actually have you know, pretty good weapon strength. Granted, they're poisoned right now, but they have a 42 base weapon strength, I think, so they're much stronger than, you know, regular hounds and hit very, very hard. But that Mortis engine's still just doing circles here. I do have my Dire Pack coming back to clean up here a little bit. My opponent finally gets a good opportunity to get on my Mortis engine right here, the Claw of Nagash. You know, Throg gets over there, and you see 1 or 2 hits from Throg really punishes this thing. So I do pull the Dire Pack to surround Throg. You can see he's karate kicking some of these dire wolves right here, which is pretty funny. I love when trolls like kick and then throw up, and it looks like he actually projectile vomits. Didn't do much damage, but nonetheless, we should be a-okay. So the Giants here finally starting to get worn down. You can see in the back line some of these Norskins are coming back to fight again against these Graveguard, but it's definitely not looking too good for them. And you know, he's probably going to start suffering army losses here as you know, Throg is starting to get beaten down a little bit. His HP is getting low. He's being worn down by Cryptors and just, you know, a lot of constant pressure. The Giants at about 10% and 40% respectively, and that is going to be it. So let's go ahead and take a look. So guys, the Skeleton Spears are a nice like secondary line. Granted, as you see, they didn't rack up a lot of kills, 7, 16, 11, but they really mucked up my enemy's forces. So basically the Giants were just surrounded by Cryptors, you know, being perpetually poisoned. Granted, the Giants gave it back to them. I lost one full group of Cryptors, and the other ones, I used like 3 or 4 invocations of Nehek to keep them alive. And of course, the Mortis Engine effect does heal. So there was a lot of healing being invested there. But nonetheless, shutting down those two Giants, which in terms of a cost analysis are like a major portion of his army, that's a lot of investment there. And, you know, I would have liked to have seen like the Maws of Savagery and some Famir Warriors. I wasn't a fan of Famir Warriors in the beginning because they're relatively low melee attack and melee defense. Well, the melee defense isn't bad. I think it's just the melee attack, but they actually do really well in the Vampire Counts matchup. So for any of you guys that are playing Norska, I'll try and post a game. I haven't been able to get too many Vampire Counts opponents, but using a front line of Marauder Spears and then stacking Famir Warriors on top of them is a very good synergy because the Marauder Spears can deal with the Cryptors, and then the Famir Warriors pretty much deal with everything else, which is really cool. But regardless, very well played to my opponent, Sovi Dret. I think that's it. Yeah, I tried my best, guys. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder. And hey, hopefully you guys enjoyed this Vampire Counts cast. Have an excellent night and take care.